Hey YouTube, hey subscribers, thanks for tuning in. I got this comment on a video and I wanted to respond with a video because I thought it was a very good comment and I think that it's very sincere, and I thought it was a great opportunity to kind of address this question and this thought that either narcissists do have or that people who might be fence walkers might have. I suspect this person is a fence walker. But who knows? They might be a full-blown narcissist. But just the willingness to kind of even reflect at all tells me that this person is more than likely a fence walker, someone who's just developed a really bad habit of interacting, but is not necessarily a narcissist. But here's the comment. This video has me wondering if I'm a narc or something similar, especially the part where you say narcs view other people's perceptions as a lie. Well, so many people exaggerate or speak sarcastically, it might as well all be a lie. Also, I'm stuck on empathy. What's the benefit of understanding why someone feels a certain way? I'm down with letting it be, not dismissing it, but to understand it? That seems like a waste of time. So many variables and influences to consider. It almost seems pretentious or delusional to think you understand how someone feels, even if you've been in the same situation. I don't know, maybe I'm getting too lost in the details here, but I'm hoping for some clarification. Keep up the good vids. So I want to answer this question in multiple parts. Let's start with the first point that they bring up, which is especially the part where you say narcs view other people's perceptions as a lie. Well, so many people exaggerate or speak sarcastically, it might as well all be a lie. Let's talk about that a little bit. Do people exaggerate and speak sarcastically often? Yes. Do people tell flat out lies? Yes, they do. But what you want to do is develop discernment. So when you're listening to someone speak, you're listening for the truth. You're listening for those exaggerations. You're listening for those sarcastic moments, and you're also listening for flat out lies. You can't declare it all a lie just because people exaggerate and speak sarcastically sometimes. So that's what a narcissist would do. A narcissist would just declare it all a lie and not consider any of it factual or any of it having any weight. An old saying that people love to say is a broken clock is right twice a day. So that means someone who's wrong all the time even has the potential to be correct. So I'm not saying that now you have to slow down and dissect everything that people say, but you have to open yourself up to the possibility that they might be telling you the truth, that they might be trying to share something with you, and accept that some people exaggerate, some people are sarcastic, some people lie. They do. And if there are people in your life who do that all the time, if these are people that you can kind of distance yourself from, do so, because that would be a very unpleasant situation to have to live through all the time. Someone who's always exaggerating, always sarcastic, always lying, and you have to comb through all that to find the truth. That's a waste of your time. So it's not that people don't lie and do all those things and exaggerate. It's that you can't make a definitive declaration that everything that they're saying is a lie, especially the perceptions part, because it's so hard to tell someone else that their perception of something is not true because you don't know how they're experiencing it because you're not inside of them. So what you might consider exaggerated may not be exaggerated to them. Their perception of something, their scale of it might be different than yours. So you have to kind of accept that everyone's experience of life is different. So you can't automatically judge someone's perception as a lie. You really can't. It's not a fair thing to do because really only they can attest to their perception of something. Don't be so quick to discount others' perceptions. So now let's get into the empathy part. You said, what's the benefit of understanding why someone feels a certain way? I'm down with letting it be, so you're not dismissing it, but to understand it, that seems like a waste of time. So let's talk about that part a little bit. The first question, what is the benefit of understanding why someone feels a certain way? There are multiple benefits to this, and we'll walk through them all. There are several reasons it's beneficial to understand why someone feels a certain way. To give you a story from my life, I had a friend, and she would be dating or seeing someone, and it would end after sometimes 6 months, a year, and I would always say, well, Do you know why? What happened? And she would say, does it matter? It's over. And I'm like, well, it kind of matters because you want to know, like, is there a pattern emerging? Is there something the same about them? Is it something the same about you? Is the reason always the same? Like, don't you want to know the pattern? And she basically said no. She wasn't interested because to her, it didn't matter why it was over. It was just over. Well, that might work for some people, but you lose valuable feedback and very, very valuable data when you take that approach. Because then what's to stop you from doing the same thing again and again and again and again? Because you don't think it matters why, or you don't understand the reason why someone feels a certain way. So the number one thing, that was the kind of a pretext. Number one, you're not getting the full picture. So when you don't understand why someone or a group of people feels a certain way, and you're only looking at the surface level detail of an issue, you are not getting the full picture. So you are only seeing a fraction of the truth. You're only seeing a portion. You have blinders on, so you can't see out of your peripheral vision at all. You can't see up or down. All you can see is straight, and you think you can see everything, when really there's so much more going on around the sides, the top, the bottom. You're missing the full picture. You're not getting the full story, which leads kind of to the second point, which is how people feel dictates what they do. And that is a fact. People try to discount emotions, but emotions drive action. Thoughts drive action too, but emotions are made out of thoughts. Emotions are composed of thoughts. So thoughts turn into emotions that ultimately turn into action. So oftentimes when you hear about people's relationships ending, like a marriage breaking up, one side or the other will say, I wasn't happy. And the other side will say, well, what do they mean they weren't happy? They had this, they had that. I gave them this, I gave them that. I did this, I did that. How could they not be happy? They don't understand how that person feels, and they don't think it's important to understand how they feel. All they're looking at is the surface level. So when you ignore that underbelly, it comes back to bite you eventually, because feelings determine action. How people feel determines what they do. If you're miserable on a job, misery is a feeling. You are more than likely going to quit that job eventually because you felt miserable. If you're happy on a job, more than likely, if all things hold steady, you'll probably stay on that job for a long time because you're happy there. Same thing in relationships. Miserable people leave relationships. Happy people stay in relationships. If you live in a neighborhood that you feel is not safe, once you have the money or the means or the ability to do so, you're probably going to move out of that neighborhood because you don't feel safe. You don't feel like your family is safe there. Feelings determine actions. So to not understand how people feel and to only gauge that surface level, what they do is the end result. So you're seeing the end of the feeling. You're seeing the final product of the feelings and emotions that they have inside. So when you don't know how people feel, or you don't understand how they would feel or how it would make them feel, it puts you in a really bad position for being able to predict what's going to happen next. And those people who can do that, people who have empathy, oftentimes can predict what's going to happen next. And a lot of times they'll tell you what's going to happen next. A friend, a coworker, a family member, trusted mentor will say, hey, if you don't do this, this is going to happen. And you don't believe it because you've had no outward indication that that's the case, because you don't understand how things make people feel. And you also don't understand that feelings determine action every single time. So you need to know how people feel so you know what they're going to do. Now, here's the piggyback on that point. If you are the cause of these people's particular feelings, that kind of triples the effect. So it's one thing to try to observe how someone feels as a result of some other outside force, or maybe even an internal one. But when you're the one triggering the happiness, the sadness, the madness, when you're the one doing that, that's what's creating the chaos and turmoil in your life. Now, I do believe that people are responsible for their own feelings. You might feel angry. It doesn't mean you have to now go start hitting things. We as adults are supposed to be able to say, wow, I feel really angry. I want to punch a wall, but I'm not going to. You see what I mean? So I'm not saying that you make people do things. You make people mad. You make people happy. You make people sad, because ultimately we're kind of in control of our own feelings, but you can be that catalyst that ultimately triggers anger. Absolutely. And frustration, especially if you're someone who is likened unto a brick wall in terms of communication, in terms of trying to just deal with you on a human level, and you won't let that happen. Yes, that will ultimately trigger frustration, because that's just a natural reaction to not being able to make progress with a person. So you have to understand how your actions are triggering certain feelings in other people who may not necessarily act on those feelings right away. They might try to manage their frustration with you, manage their disappointment, manage their anger. But ultimately, the house of cards collapses and they have to depart from your presence in some meaningful way. So you have to be aware of that. And what I found with narcissists is most narcissists just don't care. They do not care how their actions impact others, much like a baby doesn't. But the baby has an excuse. The narcissist does not. But babies don't care how they impact the environment. They'll cry in the middle of a quiet church service, in the middle of a movie theater. They'll fall out in the middle of a grocery store floor, on a busy Saturday afternoon. They do not care how they impact the environment, but they also have an excuse. And part of their process is learning that, hey, when I scream in the middle of a quiet church service, it impacts other people. It disturbs their peace, and they have a right to peace just like I do. It's respecting that other people have the same rights that you do. So it's that same hope you have with a narcissist, except a narcissist never graduates to that next step of learning. They stay stuck in one mode, even though that one mode has proven to not be effective for them. Even though it has proven to have detrimental results, they are determined to stay stuck exactly how they are and not change, even though it's actually not beneficial to them, which is the most disturbing part. So you have to avoid people who are comfortable going down with the ship, and the ship being them. They'll let their own ship sink just to prove a point. That's not okay. So next point. Even if you don't agree with me on the things that we just said, you're not getting the full picture. How people feel dictates what they do. And then if you're causing their feelings, good, bad, or indifferent, the effect is even greater. Even if you're not into that, maybe I can appeal to you on this level. Who or what do you want to be ultimately at the end of your life when you're talking about legacy? Do you want to have been a force of good, or do you want to have been a force of evil, or do you care at all? Do you care the impact that you're having on the world? Do you care that when you die, the obituary is going to say the same thing about you that it says about everybody else. You would have given the shirt off your back, nicest person ever, lit up a room, warmest personality, would help anybody. They're going to say that about everybody. They're not going to tell the truth about you. But you know who's going to tell the truth about you? Your children, your spouses, your friends, your coworkers. In the quiet times when they're just sharing a cup of coffee in the living room or on the deck is when they'll tell the truth about who you were. So you think you're hiding your legacy, but you're really not. You're actually building it with each passing day. And if you're choosing to be a force of evil in the world, that's what's going to get discussed behind closed doors. Oh, they'll print nice things about you publicly, but behind closed doors is what's going to get discussed. Now, I am an advocate for people living their lives in a way that's true for them. The implied back part of that statement is in a way that causes no harm. So permission to exist, you have permission to exist. You have the right to exist exactly as you are, as long as you're not causing any harm to others. Do you see? You cannot have it both ways. You can't say, well, me being who I am is someone that causes harm to others. That's just not how it works in this realm. Maybe it works that way in a different realm, but it doesn't work that way in this realm. You are free to be whoever you want to be. You just cannot bring harm to others, especially on purpose, and think that that's okay, because it's not. I want you to consider that. Consider the conversations that will be had about you if you're choosing to live a life that caters to evil. Fourth, and finally, on this particular point, I'm sure that you want people to care about and understand your feelings. And that's the crux of narcissism. It's one of the most irritating features about you guys. You don't want to understand, or you don't care to understand other people's feelings, how you're impacting them, the ways in which you're causing chaos and destruction in your own immediate environment and in your own life. You don't care about that, but when it comes to how people treat you, you expect to be treated the way other people want to be treated. And I find that so strange. It's like you should be accepting of whatever you get because you want other people to be accepting of whatever it is that you dish out. So you have to be willing to accept it how it comes, but you don't. Most narcissists throw the biggest temper tantrums you've ever seen when people treat them even close to how they treat others. They explode. So it's like, why do you demand fairness and reciprocation? Well, no, you don't demand reciprocation. You demand one-sidedness. Why do you demand fairness and justice on your behalf? But when it comes to other people, it's almost like, well, I don't care what happens to them as long as I'm treated fairly. Why do you think it's fair? And why do you think other people are not owed the same understanding as you? You want other people to understand you. You know how I know that? Because you often go into monologues and diatribes explaining how you feel about things. But if other people try to express to you how they feel about something, your phone is dying, your battery's dying, you gotta go, what? I missed that. Now you're messing with pots and pans. All these things start happening and you can't listen to how they feel. And when they're trying to explain how they feel, but you expect endless attention when it comes to how you feel. So you have to ask yourself why you feel like that's okay. At what point in your life did that mindset become okay with you? That people better treat me a certain way, but I don't care how I treat others. It's going to imbalance and it's going to come back to bite you. Because one thing about narcissism and their behavior is that their karma is actually built into the behavior. So even if you're not a spiritual person, even if you care nothing about the spirit realm, God, any of that stuff, on any level, you are a pure atheist, know that your narcissistic lifestyle has karma built into it. It's built in. So it's going to come back to bite you sooner or later. It will. And you kind of know that. And that's what creates all the anxiety, right? Or maybe you don't care. You might sleep like a baby. I don't know. But let's continue on with the actual question. So you said that there are so many variables and influences to consider. It almost seems pretentious or delusional to think you understand how someone feels, even if you've been in the same situation. So I actually see what you're trying to say. You're saying, how can I ever attest to the inner workings of your mind? And the truth of the matter is you can't. All that we really have is each other's word and hopefully some trust there. You don't want to be naive or gullible, but hopefully to some extent, when people are telling you something that's true about them, they're telling you the truth. You give them the benefit of the doubt, not to the extent that it would impoverish you or put you in a situation where now you're jeopardized in some way because you believed them. That's not what I'm saying. Because people do lie about all kinds of things to try to take advantage of other people. You must remain alert. But you have to kind of trust that people are telling you the truth when they're confiding in you and telling you certain things. And it all depends on who it is. But ultimately, their actions will tell you whether or not they were telling you the truth. Ultimately, they're going to tell you how they feel first, how they feel. And then when you don't believe how they feel, their actions will follow. So it's kind of like you could do one or the other. You can kind of believe on the front end or see what they were saying was actually true on the back end when they back it up with action. So I really don't know what to tell you there other than the opposite is also true. It's also pretentious and delusional to think that what they're saying is an automatic lie. It's almost like we don't know. How could one actually know? As human beings, how do we get back to that level of trust? How do we get back to the level of trust to where when I tell you something about me, you believe it and understand it and you don't violate it? Because sometimes it all depends on what it is. If it's something I'm telling you like a boundary, so you don't cross it and you don't violate it, then I would expect for you to believe me so you don't cross and violate that boundary. To push the boundary away because you think it's pretentious or delusional to understand what they're saying or feeling or telling you, that's kind of what makes you a narcissist, because you believe you already know everything. You believe you know what's true. You believe you know what's false. And in that, you are missing so much information, and it actually becomes very easy to play you. Because once a person can see that your mind is sealed off, they can predict what you're going to do. It's pretty deep, but it's actually also not that deep. It's kind of simple. So with that, I'll say this. I don't know if you're a narcissist or not. Only you can make that determination, and a qualified therapist, medical professional. But I like that you are reflecting, at least. I think it sparked a very, very good video. I think it sparked an interesting video. Hopefully you see this. I hope that this has been helpful, and I look forward to the conversation, comments, and discussions down below. Thanks you guys always for tuning in. Take care, and I grant you the permission to exist. Bye-bye.